It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
And it's live, despite the time differences. Welcome to the mother of all talk shows. Massive attack. This episode is called this evening, and heaven knows we have many massive attacks to choose from. The massive attack on the Gay Pride Parade in Berlin, launched by a crazed ISIS extremist fanatic, mass murderer. Only killed one, but maimed dozens of people and tried to kill dozens of people. Unfortunately, he's been shot dead by police in Berlin because, for one, I would have wanted to know exactly who he was working for. The massive attacks, including the threat of nuclear attack, being mounted and threatened by Donald Trump all through the week, have mysteriously stopped. For the last two nights, there has been no massive attack on Iran. Is it because they've run out of missiles, run out of road, or is some kind of initiative underway? Massive attacks on freedom and liberty, massive attacks on Russian civilians playing in a holiday resort and cruelly cut down, mass murdered by the Ukrainian force that is still supported, hook, line and sinker, by Europe and the United States of America. Massive attacks on liberty and freedom in the metropolitan countries. It's all coming up tonight. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. Well, if I could choose and play a piece of music to open the show tonight, it would be Start Me Up. If you start me up, I'll never stop. It's my anthem, but it's also one of the masterpieces of Mick Jagger, born in Dartford 83 years ago today. Happy birthday, Mick. You're an inspiration to all of us who are getting on a bit in years. Still moving like Jagger. But so many dark stories to talk to you about, how to fit them all into a 20-minute monologue, starting with what happened in Berlin. Now, a lot of people don't like gay pride parades. I'm not a big fan of them myself. But gay pride parades are a perfectly legal piece of the social architecture of Western countries. And the people who attend them are entitled to the protection of the state, the same protection as any other member of the state. The fact that that is not true in Germany is, of course, lamentable, but does not excuse for 1 second, 1 millisecond, the attempted mass murder and the actual murder of one reveller and the maiming, mutilating, wounding of dozens of others, some of whom may well yet die, and all of whom were intended to die. I feared the worst when I heard that the assassin, the murderer, was called Abdul. And then I learned he was a 21-year-old Lebanese German, born in Germany in 2005. So don't go crying, deport him. He's never been anywhere else other than Germany. But he had fallen under the influence of the ISIS-Al-Qaeda phenomenon, which has blighted much of the 21st century and is an entirely homegrown creation. Don't be telling me now that this somehow arose in the prison camps of the United States in Iraq, or with al-Zarqawi in the deserts of eastern Jordan. Don't be telling me now that this all arose organically. That idea died when ISIS toured in their Toyota pickup trucks, hundreds and hundreds of them, and conquered the second city of Iraq under their then leader al-Baghdadi. His deputy leader, al-Jolani al-Shara, is now the Western imposed president of Syria. Don't take my word for that. Donald Trump tells you almost every day. And the Western media that were filled with the horrors of Al-Qaeda when they were cutting throats and cutting heads and eating hearts in the long civil war in Syria, buttressed by a mass invasion of the kind of people as this Abdul, that kind of foreign extremist, was facilitated in their invasion of Syria and armed and funded to the teeth by Western governments, including my own government, including the German government, most pertinently in this story. I wanted to know who Abdul was really working for. But I'll never know now because he's been shot dead, I can reveal, by the Berlin police. Now, I don't know the circumstances. Maybe they had no alternative but to shoot him dead. But it's a pity because we have to expose the rottenness at the heart of Western governments who support terrorism where it suits them and who cluck and are horrified by it where it doesn't. I am a simple guy. You know that about me. I hate and oppose all terrorism, whomsoever is carrying it out, whomsoever is the victim of it. And the attack in Germany is, of course, one of a series of such heinous acts of mass murder and mutilation in Germany, in Belgium, in France, and of course in the United Kingdom itself. But that has not been any cause for introspection on the part of Western governments, who remain completely ready to support a Kiev coup regime which is openly carrying out terrorist attacks just like Abdul. What's the difference between Abdul driving a car into a gay pride parade in Berlin and the shelling, deliberate, targeted shelling of holidaymakers on a beach in the Ukraine by the Ukrainian forces? What's the difference between burning people alive in the trade union house in Odessa, as Western governments still refuse to tell you about, and the actions of this now deceased Abdul B. in Berlin? You feel me? You get my drift here? These sick hypocrites who put guns and sharp swords in the hands of small children, and then who cry about the result if those who are the victims are our people, cheer the result and send more money and weapons if the victims are the people that they regard as having no worth. What but terrorism was hitting Minab Primary School with 2 Tomahawk missiles, not even acknowledged, let alone apologized for? What's the difference between Pete Hegseth and Abdul B? There is no material difference at all, certainly not to the children whose flesh was found sticking to the wreckage of the Tomahawk missiles concerned. What's the difference between Abdul B and Donald Trump, who boasts of war crimes committed and in the offing? What's the difference between Abdul B and the Fox News commentators who amused themselves and their bovine audience in the week, discussing which war crime they should carry out next? Should it be bridges? Should it be electricity supply? Should it be water supply? Should it be desalination? Openly discussing things that were adjudged by the tribunal at Nuremberg in 1945 to have been war crimes, for which some, but not enough, of the perpetrators were hanged by the neck until dead. But why has Trump stopped in Iran over the last 2 nights? I'm presuming that this will be the 3rd night where no attack is mounted. Some say, some very highly placed sources say, that this is because the United States is running out of missiles and running out critically of interceptor missiles to deal with the Iranian retaliation, which has rained down on the satrapies on the Arab side of the Gulf, who gave willingly, opened their legs and lay there while the United States occupied them, occupied their territory in order to murder schoolgirls in Minab, murder volleyball players, murder doctors, teachers, emergency workers. These regimes lay there and thought of Mammon. Well, they're not thinking of Mammon now, because precious little is left of their means of defending themselves, and that was there in the first place has been taken from them and given to Netanyahu, who arrives for the 6th time in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, where he will sadly not be arrested, but rather feted in the Oval Office, glittering with gold. My God, if they put any more gold leaf in there, they'll have to plaster it over Donald Trump's coupon and his increasingly elephantine suits. The feting of Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't just amount to 21-gun salutes, doesn't just amount to standing ovations in the United States Congress. It works in mysterious ways. Like Karim Khan, King's Counsel. Do you know what that means? Those of you outside of the United Kingdom, it means the king himself appointed this man as one of his counselors, a king's counselor, Karim Khan, who rose as a British of Asian heritage lawyer to be the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Blair's great achievement. I opposed it at the time because I knew exactly what it would become. And I oppose it still. But as long as the liberals, small l, in Europe and North America extol its virtues, what about the case of Karim Khan, KC? Like Julian Assange before him, framed on fake sex charges, which were adjudged by 3 judges sitting as a 3-judge tribunal, listening to all of the evidence and deciding unanimously that these charges didn't amount to a row of beans. So they convened the political kangaroo court and have now dismissed Karim Khan. I don't know the man. He might be a sack of shit for all I know. But that's not why he's been removed. He's been removed for one reason only. He's the man that signed the arrest warrant for the war criminal and genocider Benjamin Netanyahu. And Israel is boasting this evening about what they called the central role that they played in destroying the life of Karim Khan. One minute he was a king's counsel, now his life is destroyed. Israel is boasting about its role and boasting that Marco Rubio has promised them that the International Criminal Court itself will be destroyed or dismantled, to use Rubio's own words. Donald Trump may have run out of missiles, but he may have run out of guts. He may have run out of guts to invade Iran, as he keeps farting into the microphone that he's going to do on a daily basis, destroy their civilization completely, knock them back to the Stone Age. They were never in the Stone Age, you buffoon, you palooka. Iran was a vibrant, sophisticated civilization 5,600 years ago. You are boasting of your 250 years of Western civilization, which turned out to mean, quite predictably really, the extermination of the native population and the enslavement of millions of Africans that you put to work as beasts of burden, having lost many of them in the Middle Passage when the slavers seized them from Africa and sailed them to you. You want to talk about civilization, Donald Trump? Do you think we haven't seen the Epstein files? You think we haven't been following your life of sin, degeneracy, depravity? You think we don't know what you're doing and what you have done? You calling the Iranians all kinds of names. History will record it, not just with horror, but with ribaldry. Not the kind of ribaldry with which you answered the White House correspondents' attacks on you just the other night in DC. All your enemies were there. All the people that hate you were there. They were glorying in giving awards to each other for the job they've done against you. Much of it deserved, some of it fictitious, fallacious, Russiagate, and all the rest of it. I never saw a man die more slowly than the man I saw in the crumpled suit of Donald J. Trump, dying on that stage just the other night. And when you came to answer them, instead of satire, it was not Jonathan Swift. It wasn't even Benny Hill. It was as moronic, knuckle-dragging, in the pits as I have ever seen you. I'm going to predict that you're not long for this world. I don't wish you death, but I wish you an early retirement before you take the rest of us over the precipice into the Third World War, which will be the last world war. Which brings me to the Ukraine. There's been a rapprochement, according to Zelensky, between Trump, his administration, and the people who once were said to have no cards, the people who once were said to be dictators, to have no electoral mandate, the people of whom it was said would receive no more American war material and the means to deploy it. The Americans are back in the Ukraine war. These missiles that murdered all those holidaymakers on the beach, they were American missiles. They were NATO missiles. They were fired by NATO personnel, either in the form of mercenaries or on secondment for training purposes. The Russians have tired of all this. I keep telling people, but nobody in the West even reports, let alone listens. I keep telling you, the Russians are tired of all this. They're going now for broke. The spirit of anchorage has sunk in the Bering Straits. The Russians are going to finish this war at pace. And that's exactly what they are doing right now, this evening, as a huge tanker sinks off the coast of Odessa, as ballistic missiles by the score lay waste the military, political infrastructure in Kiev that most Russians can't understand why that was still standing after all these years. The days of Western politicians making day trips to Kiev are over, if those politicians have any sense at all. And as Putin said today, the day will surely come, and come faster than many now realize, when not just the eastern lands will return to Mother Russia, but the western lands will return to Mother Poland, Mother Hungary, and Mother Romania. There's many, many points that I haven't had time to deal with, but I happen to have maybe the world's best guest, certainly the best informed one. It's the hip-hop artist, Lowkey, right after this. Stay tuned.
The 1897 edition of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Read by George Galloway. Available only on Patreon.
The cylinder was artificial. hollow, with an end that screwed out. Something within the cylinder was unscrewing the top. "Good heavens," said Ogilvy. "There's a man in it, men in it, half roasted to death, trying to escape." At once, with a quick mental leap, he linked the thing with the flash on Mars. The thought of the confined creature was so dreadful to him that he forgot the heat and went forward to the cylinder to help turn. But luckily, the dull radiation arrested him before he could burn his hands on the still glowing metal.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, we seem to have a record poll on our hands. Which is the greatest threat to the world? China, Russia, or the United States of America? Already a staggering 42,413 people have voted, and I'm only now just reading it out. You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, and on patreon.com/George Galloway. Remember, if you're watching on the YouTube stream, subscribe, please, to my channel. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 855 50 MOATS, MOATS, or 855 50 66287. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0800 229 4411. And the worldwide number, 0044 203 966 2625. Lowkey, the renowned hip-hop artist and host of the Watchdog podcast, is my favorite guest. I learn more from him in the course of an interview than I've read, certainly in the mainstream, all week. And I think you feel that way too. That's why we're all applauding as we welcome Lowkey back to the stage. So much to talk about, Karim, but the British situation has become interesting. The first person that the new Labour Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, called was Donald Trump and gave him permission for what he laughably described as defensive strikes, which turned out to be the heaviest American bombers setting off for Iran to murder men, women and children there. That seems to suggest that Andy Burnham isn't much of a change from Keir Starmer. Am I right?
Absolutely, George, and it's wonderful to be back with you now. Thank you for having me. I think what people need to understand is Keir Starmer was literally the only leader of this country that was a member of the Trilateral Commission before he was Prime Minister of the country. Now, the Trilateral Commission is a key US military business think tank, and other esteemed members of it had been Jeffrey Epstein and George Bush. So really, for somebody to be more servile to the United States than Keir Starmer, and that is Andy Burnham now, it's quite an achievement, actually. But also, I think what people in this country fail to understand is the legacy that Britain has in a country like Iran. Of course, you and I will remember that Mohammad Mossadegh, the democratically elected leader of Iran in the 50s, committed the unforgivable crime of wanting his nation not to be a petrol station for what would become BP. It was at that time called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Now, when he said that he wanted to nationalize that company, the British with the CIA and, of course, the Shah at that time, not this dwindling fool that we see now being pushed forward as a leader, but his it would have been his grandfather at that time, if I remember correctly, if not his father, was imposed on Iran by both the CIA and MI6 in what they called the White Revolution, which is where they deposed the democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh. What Britain has done since then is infrastructurally been locked into a relationship with both the United States and Israel, where they assist intelligence operations against Iran. For example, in the case of the Offer shipping group, this was a group which was docking in Iran, and according to a Sunday Times article published, was ferrying elite agents for Israel inside Iran for many years for assassinations and whatnot. Now, that very company is not only a UK-based company, but also, in addition to that, the group protecting its navigation across the seas was an offshoot of the British Ministry of Defence by the name of Ambery. And so now you have Offer family putting money into UK politics. Particularly Robert Jenrick has received a lot of money from Aidan Offer, who of course was the head of those shipping companies that were involved in such a scandal. So Britain has structurally this very close relationship with what the United States and Israel have been doing across the years to Iran. They are the previous colonial power that was attempting to impose a particular way of doing things on Iran. And now you have British Petroleum, the roots. How many people in this country know? They will know BP, but very few of them will know that the roots of BP are in something called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which was about siphoning the wealth of Iran outside of it. And it's a massive mistake for the political elites of this country to make this error of judgment vis-a-vis Iran. And of course, they're not on the right side of history. When you look at the military budgets of these states, Iran's military budget is around $10 billion. The United States military budget is 100 times that. If you were to take China, Russia, and Iran put together, their military budget is about 500 billion. The US budget is almost twice that put together of China, Russia, and Iran. So a very clear answer to your poll today. Without a shadow of a doubt, the United States is the greatest threat to human life across the world, and it's built that way.
And yet, for all that money, they have been completely unable to subjugate the Islamic Republic of Iran with its $10 billion total defense budget. They have not been able to land a single boot on the ground for fear of that boot being carried home horizontally. They have not been able to destroy Iran's missile capability, an entirely homegrown missile capability. They have not been able to open the Straits of Hormuz that were open before the sneak attack last year and the sneak attacks subsequently. They have not been able to achieve any of their objectives. And even the frenzied bombing of the last few nights has paused. Some say because the Americans have run out of munitions, although if that happened to me and I'd spent $1 trillion, I'd be asking why. What do you think is the reason why?
Well, let's be clear, first of all. What Iran is asking for is actually a very simple demand that is in place in other countries. So Egypt derives a taxation from the use of the Suez Canal. Turkey derives taxation from the Bosphorus. Okay, this is very basic what Iran is asking for. It's not asking for something unreasonable at all. Now, if you look at the way that the US military and the military industrial complex specifically has been structured, Eisenhower warned the United States about this. What you have is a shakedown. Of course, the well-known book, the war is a massive racket. This is what it is. It's been the way that the U.S. military-industrial complex is structured. Maximum profit extraction from the public purse. So therefore you'll have projects like the F-35, which is the most expensive military project in history that didn't work at the beginning, but you know, is forced on governments around the world. They want it as well because it supposedly gives them air superiority. But what Iran has proved is that the opposite logic, which is al-haja al-ikhtira', the necessity is the mother of innovation, has actually worked to debilitate what the United States is trying to do. Now, what that comes out of is the humiliation of the Shah's period. So during the Shah's time, he signed a military project with Israel called Project Flower. Now, in that project, what you essentially saw was Israel run off with Iran's intellectual property, and Iran have nothing to show for it. Also, the Shah made a deal for hundreds of tanks from the British that once the revolution happened in 1979, they never got their money back, and they also never got their tanks. So what happened was, in the Iran-Iraq war, Iran was subject to missile strikes on its villages and its cities, and was unable to protect itself because it simply didn't have the capabilities. They'd shoot back flares in some cases. And then you had a gentleman by the name of Hassan Tehrani Moghadam, who took it upon himself to go to Syria with 13 other individuals, and they learned how to reverse engineer some of the rocketry that they had access to. The Libyans also gave them access. The North Koreans also gave them access. And really, through the ingenuity of the Iranian population, they were able to develop rockets, clearly understanding that they couldn't go fighter jet for fighter jet generally with the United States. They spent 40 years preparing for their war with the United States. They understood that when Yemen was subject to the Saudi campaign, which killed a huge amount of people, which bombed all types of civilian infrastructure across the country, this was the United States, this was Britain, and this was Israel fighting against a regional project for decolonization. Decolonization of the militaries, decolonization of the economies. When they saw the war in Lebanon, they understood that this was not just Israel fighting Lebanon, it was the United States fighting Lebanon. When they faced their 6-day war, which you have to remember, Iran has been victorious in the 40-day war against the United States and Israel. It was victorious in the war against Israel before in 2025, and it is seemingly victorious now. Now, the reason that the United States is trying to back off, extricate itself from this, and have its war against the axis of resistance fought by proxies is because, as you have alluded to, its air defenses are essentially spent. They are now rationing their air defenses. They do not have a hope in hell of putting boots on the ground. In fact, that would be the quagmire which Iran is inviting. These US forces, let's be clear, George, across the war on terror, have been used to sitting in military bases in Nevada, controlling drones that kill farmers in Afghanistan. They are certainly not in a situation where they can go onto the ground in the Zagros Mountains and attempt to take on a force that has been training for them for 40 years. It is an unwinnable war for the United States.
Trump has no off-ramp, really. He can, having promised to condown savagery all week, he can hardly now say that he's won and pull stumps and leave. And the American elections are racing towards us at a rate of not certainly faster than the US Navy is able to get to the coastline of Iran. Where do you think this leaves him?
Well, Trump, as you know, was somebody that sold himself on being anti-war, on being the antithesis of the neocons who had controlled US foreign policy, at least since Bush Jr.'s time. And so really he tried to differentiate himself. But actually, he clearly fell into the clutches of the very same forces that believed that a war against Iran was winnable, not understanding that when you establish 31 military cities underground, in which you are developing missiles which can strike from incredible distance, that the opposition have little intelligence on, it means that he's really locked into this situation, and his best hope at this stage is to try and pass off the region into a proxy war situation, which can drive things to a kind of standstill. But then on the other side, what seems to be one effect of this war is the establishment of sort of politicized supply chains. So what the United States was able to establish through its near 1,000 military bases around the world was its role as the bodyguard of global capital. It was protecting the global trade, but it's lost all credibility now in that way, and really it is down to straight up extortion of other countries, and trying to, literally 25% of humanity exists in political systems which are under US sanctions. Now, those sanctions, it has been estimated by Lancet, have caused 38 million deaths across the last 4 or 5 decades. That's not me saying that. That is the Lancet Medical Journal. 38 million people killed by US sanctions across the last 4 to 5 decades. So really, the United States is now ramping up its economic warfare against the rest of us. Because it has failed in Iran, it will attack soft targets more ferociously. And as you've seen in Venezuela, someone like yourself, George, who gave a lot also to the cause of freedom in Venezuela against imperialist rule, for you to see these moves by Delcy Rodriguez and others, swapping selfies with Marco Rubio on WhatsApp, welcoming in the Israelis. This is what happens when the empire loses out in one place, is it becomes far more ferocious in other places at imposing its will on those political systems. So it's interesting how this will all play out. I think Trump will probably suffer in the elections because of the longer this goes on, and he deserves to. The question is whether the US political system can produce an actual alternative to this kind of way of interacting with the world.
Finally, I'm interested in your take on this travesty in the ICC. Now, I don't know if this Karim Khan is a dirty degenerate or not. I presume he wouldn't have been a KC if that degeneracy had been known, but hey, we're constantly surprised these days. I do know that rich and powerful dirty dogs are not usually defenestrated and are not usually cast aside, but Karim Khan has been. So call me Sherlock Holmes. I think that Karim Khan has been made an example of to tell the international legal system, such as it is, that Israel remains completely off limits to you. And if you dream of seeking to arrest Netanyahu or any Israeli leader, we will deal with you. That's certainly how the Israeli media are portraying the downfall of Karim Khan on television this evening.
Well, you have to look back at the interview with Fatou Bensouda, who was his predecessor at the ICC. She spelled out very clearly the Israeli campaign against her when she began looking into the subject. She said she was accosted at her home by people who had rented a car, but the car being rented, it was the ID given to rent the car was from Israelis. This is what later became apparent to them. She then was in a meeting with another political leader, and the head of Mossad at the time literally was unveiled to her at the meeting, came and started speaking to her, and then she was routinely approached by this same head of Mossad across the world in different locations that she was. This is the predecessor to Karim Khan. So for us to assume that this is merely an organic process would be the height of naivety, to be honest with you, George. So without a doubt, you have to have that aspect of it. It's a continuous Israeli campaign to escape accountability, and the ICC has been one mere glimmer of hope in that possibility. But then when you look at the fact that the United States since 2002 has had the Hague Invasion Act within its legal setup, whereby it maintains the right to launch a military invasion of the ICC and shutting it down if it were to even give the impression that it might move against the United States. That is the extent to which this grotesque military civilization has an opposition to any form of mirror being put up against its actions. When the ICC was harassing presidents of states with economies smaller than one state in the United States, it was not a problem. When the ICC was harassing the political enemies of Israel and the United States, there was absolutely no problem. In fact, it was treated as sacrosanct international law. But now we see Israel being gently targeted by the ICC. It is a big problem. All hell is breaking loose. And actually, it's not just that, but Marco Rubio has vowed to dismantle the ICC. And as I just mentioned, the case of Venezuela, it has now pulled out of the ICC while in the midst of trying to get back on its feet from the earthquake, and the Israelis and the Americans swooping in to take over the country.
And in Gaza, where we once were together, the war, the killing, the massacres, the genocide just drags on, doesn't it?
And George, you know, the part of Gaza that you and me stood in, Rafah, barely exists today. The people we saw, it's unlikely that they're still alive. The walls that we looked at, the surroundings we were in, have been destroyed by this military juggernaut, which spends exorbitant amounts of resource on building these killing machines. And Gaza, it must be said, was not actually a victory for these destroyers of life. The Palestinians, according to Israel's ideas, were supposed to be thrown into the Sinai desert of Egypt. And that has not happened. When you actually compare the level of violence and the level of displacement in the Nakba to this, what I would argue, a new Nakba, of 1948, the violence was less in 1948, the displacement was more. The violence was more in 2023 to 2026, but the displacement has actually, numerically speaking, been less. There are, even when you look at the level of displacement in 1948, those almost 1 million Palestinians were about 50% of the Palestinian population. Today you have a Palestinian population worldwide, which is around 16 million people. So actually, the axis of resistance has performed a great service to humanity in facing off this military juggernaut in the way it has. But of course, the human cost has been horrific and massive.
Sobering thought indeed. Lowkey, as always, a masterclass. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Lowkey is a hip-hop artist, but he is also host of the Watchdog podcast, A Much Was. Let's have a quick break, and then it's your call. Stay tuned. Let's go to our old friend Declan in Dublin, who's online too. Go ahead, Declan.
Right, George. There's a very big protest in the town of Taipei, the last Christian village on the West Bank. If they lose this, they are finished in the Holy Land. I'd like to take the chance to salute Francesca Albanese, who is the greatest woman, I think, of our generation. And the hope is that there are other Francesca Albaneses out there who will do something, because the Western churches, the Catholic Church especially, and the other main churches are doing absolutely nothing for their co-religionists in the Holy Land, just like they did nothing for them in Syria or in Iraq.
They don't even talk about them, never mind do anything. And all these Christian politicians, and all these Christian leaders, and most of the Christian clergy haven't done or said even jack to come to their aid. They're not Christians, most of these politicians. When they say they're Christians, better count your spoons, or better still, count the burning Christian houses.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, almost 45,000 people have now voted on the poll. Which is the greatest threat to the world? China, Russia, or the United States of America? Get your vote in. Let's get this to a 50,000 poll. That is a very large opinion poll. You can vote on Telegram, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, or on patreon.com/George Galloway. Let's go to New York, where Tom wants to talk about Iran. Tom, welcome.
Hi, George. It's an honor to speak with you again. I'm afraid the pending depression will be worse than you and Professor Morandi predict. Of course, the longer the Iranian war goes, the worse it will be for the global economy. While most people focus on the war, another factor continues to grow in the background. According to the BBC and Goldman Sachs, 300 million jobs will be eliminated by AI, artificial intelligence. For example, Microsoft recently laid off 4,800 workers, including jobs in the popular and profitable Xbox video game division. They don't need those people anymore because AI is going to be better than humans. Why pay a software coder $250,000 a year or more, plus healthcare, stock benefits, when AI can do it for free? Mark Zuckerberg was quoted on a secret tape expressing similar sentiments about laying off Meta employees. After those top wage earners and millions more become redundant due to AI, where will the tax revenue come to pay America's $40 trillion in debt, plus another $100 trillion in unfunded Social Security, Medicaid liabilities? Even if trillionaire Elon Musk had a, quote, come to Jesus, end quote, moment, and decided to give all his $1 trillion away, it would be in the drop in the bucket. After World War II, the United States imposed Article 7 to, quote, rescue, end quote, Great Britain. It may be worse for America. No one wants to buy our debt after President Biden removed Russia from SWIFT in 2022. The Federal Reserve must keep interest rates high to attract buyers for our debt. $9 trillion of debt must be refinanced in 2026. Will Beijing save the sinking USS American Titanic? I don't think so. Depression may give way to civil unrest and worse. Millions may starve from famine because the Persian Gulf supplies about 20 to 25% of the world's fertilizer. Russian fertilizer is sanctioned, and Ukrainian fertilizer is largely unavailable because of the war.
That was dazzlingly brilliant as a call. The best call of the night, the best call of many a night. And you didn't even get to what's going to happen on the bond markets tomorrow. When the markets open, cognizance will be paid to the fact that China has smashed the American AI bubble into the dust. Trillions of dollars have been invested in the United States of America, in the stock markets, in a future of AI that they thought they were going to dominate and make vast profits from. But the extraordinary breakthrough of Kimi in China has laid waste all of their plans, because Kimi is going to be free. Nobody will be making profits from American AI when you can get Chinese AI just as good, largely better, for nothing, for free. So Palantir and Thiel and Musk and Grok and all these losers have just suffered a catastrophic collapse in their forecasts, in their prospects. And Meta just did a bond which has totally and abysmally failed. A disappointing 7.9% yield, Meta called it. You wait till the bond markets open tomorrow. You wait till the stock market opens tomorrow. And you didn't even get to, in your brilliant, dazzlingly brilliant call, you did not even get to what the outcome is going to be when the mass movements of people, poor people, begins as a result of this war in the Persian Gulf, starting with the mass movement of millions, largely of Indian subcontinent extraction, who will no longer be able to live in the Persian Gulf because there'll be no water, there'll be no air conditioning, no refrigeration, there will be no automation, there will be nothing, and they will be on the move. Where will they move? Not to Milwaukee, they can't get there. They're not going to go and sit in the desert and die. They are coming to Europe through Turkey. Millions and millions of them. And no border guard will be able to stop them. And the European economies, already on their knees, will be on the floor. You didn't even get to that in your brilliant call, Tom in New York. Now, some comments on YouTube about tonight's poll. Kimberly Crescent says, as an American, I got to say our puppet government is the most dangerous. And RMZ 1221 says the one with 800 plus bases outside of its own territory. Michelle Smith says, who started the most wars after World War II? And Shkipe Bekiri says, George, why didn't you mention Israel in the list of the greatest threats? Well, I don't draw up the polls, but this would be my answer. America and Israel are the same place. They are the same country. Their military has just merged. Their intelligence services have long ago merged. Their political leadership has completely merged. So for the United States of America, I'd say read Israel. And Raphael Legenda sends $5 US. Thank you, Raf. Says the Ukraine war would have been over 3 years ago if we did not have Mother Mahatma Putin running Russia. Go after them harder. On line 2, from the great state of Michigan, is Dana, who believes the U.S. is in trouble. Dana, tell us.
Good evening, sir. It's glad to talk to you again. I'm sitting here right now listening. Thank you. Sitting here listening to you, looking at a website called Track APAC for the state of Michigan. And every single person that is a representation for my state has taken money from the Israel lobby. and I'm sure you are very aware of the Authorization Defense Act that was passed by Congress and going to Senate to merge Israel's military with our own. Question to you, sir, is what does the world think of that?
Well, the world does know about it, first of all. Most of the mainstream media have an iron dome protecting the propaganda interests of the empire, and in particular Israel in this context. But insofar as people know about it, for me it's a recognition of reality. For me it is the case, and I've argued it here for years. Some will remember when people say, does Israel control the United States, or does the United States control Israel? I have argued for years on here that this is a false dichotomy, that these two countries are the same thing, that's so integrated into the empire system has Israel become, that it is now not meaningful to try to separate their interests. Of course, there are some in the United States, including some in the elite. I dare say even inside the White House, not Trump, but the other guy, who would prefer, if this was not quite rubbed in the noses of the American people as egregiously and vulgarly as it has been in the Trump and Biden administrations. There are others, however, like the late and unlamented Lindsey Graham. I hope someone stands over his grave on Tuesday until they are sure that he is dead, are and were open advocates of just that integration. Last word to you, Dana.
I appreciate the time, sir, and I'll tell you, as a local here of Michigan, the state and the United States, the country is very disappointed in Trump. I voted for that man for three times, and the disappointment and the disgust that I feel and the betrayal is overwhelming. I am a Gen Xer. I was born in 1975, and I am definitely was raised to never talk about Israel or politics or religion, and I have broken out of that a long time ago. It has cost me a lot as far as friends and family, and so on. But I've stuck to my guns, and I've became a politic nut. Learned everything I can. I don't agree with some stuff, but Alex Jones was right about a lot of things. You're right about a lot of things. And the Epstein files are definitely 100% fact, and they're being covered up. Did you see Trump's hat?
Sure,
that he
but
had
we'll
on
get
the
them.
other night?
We'll get them. You ain't any kind of politics nut. You are exactly the kind of politicized, conscientized people that the world needs, and that the United States perhaps needs most of all. Trump won the state of Michigan, promising peace. I studied the election in the state of Michigan, a state I know well, in which I have many times spoken, where I have many friends, a state with a huge Arab American, a huge Muslim American presence. He won that state purely on the promise that he was going to bring peace in the Middle East. If he had told the people in the great state of Michigan, vote for me, if elected, I will allow Netanyahu to mass murder Palestinians Lebanese, Syrians, Iranians, Yemenis. You think he would have won the state of Michigan? This man is guilty of one of the most gross deceptions in the history of politics. And my goodness, that's a hard title to snatch. Now, just before the break, a proper word of recognition for some of tonight's top Moats supporters. John Nagau, Heather Liardet, M.N. Baig, Lynn Timperley, and David Hall. A big thanks to every one of you. If you want to join them on the Wall of Fame, please go to moats.tv and click the link Donate Now. You need to give. I'm busking for you for 2 hours. Very, very late at night. I need you to give. Don't pass me by. Don't leave my hat empty. Moats.tv. Click the link. Donate now. Now, coming up, we've got my protege, my political son, the finest man in America, Jackson Hinkle. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it, I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have, and I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Sheer genius, that Donald Trump jingle. A big congratulations to those behind it. Just before I go to Jackson Hinkle, let me tell you that we've passed 45,000 votes on tonight's poll. And we could easily get to 50 before the poll closes in about 45 minutes. So get voting. Telegram t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, and on patreon.com/George Galloway. Jackson Hinkle can be described as a political analyst. He's definitely the host of Legitimate Targets. But I think that as a political analyst, he's better than almost all the rest. He is a young man of courage and distinction, and I'm proud to call him my friend. Jackson Hinkle, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Wonderful to see you again, although I've been seeing quite a lot about you and on you. They certainly took umbrage at the attendance that you and a large number of journalists and broadcasters did, but they particularly focused on you because of the profile you have and, well, because you're devilishly handsome. How have you survived it?
Thanks for having me back on, George. It's always a pleasure and far too kind of an intro. But, this attack against myself and, I think there was at least 5 other American citizens that were at the funeral of Syed Ali Khamenei in Tehran was really incredible for a number of reasons. I mean, it was the largest gathering of human beings in all of history. 43 million people attended this funeral in both Iran and Iraq, and then back in Mashhad at the end, back in Iran. And I think just the numbers from the funeral attendance in Karbala in Iraq alone would have placed that funeral at one of the largest gatherings in human history just by those numbers. And obviously, Syed Ali Khamenei was not the leader of Iraq. But, I can't say I'm surprised. I think a lot of these people in the U.S. deep state are eternally jealous of how a man could be so beloved by his people, by the citizens he represents. And we're going to see Lindsey Graham's funeral very soon, as you were just talking about. And we know there's not going to be 43 million people in attendance for that. I'd be surprised if there's 4,300. 43 may even be a bit of a shock to me. I think these are going to be mostly lizard people at his funeral, not too many real people.
Quite so. Now, I followed online, as many of the viewers will have, the extraordinary events that you describe. But what did it feel like to be there with your boots on the ground, as it were? Did you experience, for example, any enmity from Iranian people? After all, it was your country that killed him.
No, there was no enmity whatsoever. I mean, I think a lot of Iranians were happy to see that there are Americans willing to come visit and to learn about their country, their culture, their faith. And, it's a multi-faith society. I went to the Armenian Christian church. We went to the synagogue Jewish synagogue, which got blown up, by the way, by Israel in the Ramadan War. And seemingly none of the, Zionist Jewish leaders in Washington, D.C. are upset about that. But everyone was just very pleased. And all I had to say to them was, there are many more Americans at home who feel the same exact way I do, who not only oppose this war, but have a deep love for the Iranian people, because it's the people that power the revolution in that country, which is striking much more than a bloody nose at the empire, which is oppressing the same Americans back at home that hold these beliefs. So, there was one thing that really caught my eye when I was in Iran, and that was on the night where I visited Engleeb Square, the Revolution Square, and one of the many places where they're holding these nightly rallies, rallying around the flag, rallying to pay their respects to the martyred supreme leader, and in the face of the Zionist U.S. aggression. And I went up on the stage, and when I was on the stage, there was tens of thousands of people out in Engleeb Square, and I was there with Hossein Tahiri, who's one of the most powerful, well-known singers in all of Iran. They have these religious songs, which I'm sure you know, called Noha, which are essentially like Quranic verses turned into music. And when I looked out in the crowd, it was the most energetic, passionate crowd I've ever seen in my life. And the thing that shouldn't be lost on anyone is that most of the people in the crowd were young people, Gen Z. And you know as well as I do, you travel across the world, you see how Gen Z in so many countries is getting caught up in this brain rot of the Western culture, and their brains are being poisoned. Couldn't be further from the truth in Iran. Gen Z is fully with the revolution, fully dedicated, and that was the most beautiful thing I saw.
And yet Donald Trump tells us this is defeated people, begging him for peace. This is people with no armed forces left to speak of, economically ruined, oppressed by a small clique. But I know that's not true, but you were there. Tell us the extent to which it isn't true.
Well, I mean, first of all, everywhere you go, I only went to Tehran, so that's all I can speak of. But, our good friend Chris Halali, he went on to Najaf, I believe. He went to Mashhad. We had a bunch of friends in Karbala. And everywhere I went, at least in Tehran, and I'm sure the same was true for Chris when he traveled elsewhere, it was just, full support for the revolution and for the martyred leader. And the one thing I will say that, obviously not everyone in the country supports the government. That would be insane and delusional to believe that. No country on the face of the earth has full support from its citizenry. But what I will say is when I went around and was speaking on the streets with some shop owners, in the bazaars, and I was speaking to people, very proficient in the English language because some of them went to Western universities, and even they were saying things like, "Look, at the end of the day, we had our, we had our thoughts about the government and this and that, but how could anyone support the actions of the U.S. at this moment? Why are they bombing little schoolgirls? Why are they bombing girls playing volleyball? Why are they bombing civilians all across the country, innocent people?" So the actions of the United States, as we all predicted, actually resulted in probably the only group of people who would have been sympathetic to them turning their backs against the empire and saying, wow, I guess everything our government was saying, that the Zionists in the U.S. are willing to do anything imaginable, even murdering schoolgirls to try and stop our sovereignty. I guess our government was correct, and that was very telling for me.
No, you were absolutely correct to tell the Iranians that many people in the United States feel like you do about this matter. In fact, support for the war has now fallen in just a few months, has now fallen lower than any war in which the United States has ever been involved. It is an overwhelmingly unpopular war, and there are nationwide elections in your country hurtling towards us. November is not long. I mean, I've fought a lot of elections. I know if that you're a candidate in November, you're already in full election mode right now. And it's looking like a disaster for Trump. Will it end up that way?
I don't think he cares. I think Trump would be happy with the Republican Party dying for the foreseeable future with him. It's kind of a badge of honor in his eyes, I'd imagine. He can look out and say, the Republican Party dies without me. I'm the only guy that could make it happen. So I wouldn't be so surprised if Trump is okay with everything falling apart, falling to pieces. And obviously this is going to take a toll, but I think what we should really be on the lookout for is how far those public support polls are going to go down for this war if they do something as ludicrous as a ground invasion, which is a real possibility. I mean, they might do that. I think that the sky is the limit for how high the negativity is going to be with this war. And what the ramifications of that are going to be beyond the elections, that's the real question, because we're looking at something much bigger than that. We're looking at, Sean Ryan is going out on Tucker Carlson's show and saying that all the special operations guys in the U.S. military hate Israel and they don't want to participate in this. And they know that they're going to be going to die for Netanyahu if they get sent into this mess. So you're talking about the upper echelons of the U.S. military, which we've already known are opposed to this war in some numbers, some are not. And you're talking about some of the most expert level operators that the U.S. has at their disposal, killing machines who are going to have their lives put on the line and a decision to make. I think that this could spiral into something much bigger if they take it down the road, which unfortunately it looks like we are headed.
Revolution in the air?
I mean, at some point, what is, we got Trump now coming out and saying that he's going to give Saudi Arabia nuclear technology, also possibly enrichment, by the way. And the catch there is not that Saudi Arabia is going to be forced to invest $1 trillion more in the United States or give some sort of, special offer to the United States. Trump is saying, we're going to give you nuclear program, uranium enrichment, and you have to do recognition of Israel. You have to join the Abraham Accords. I mean, everything in our foreign policy and even domestic policy now is really just gauged at protecting Israel, boosting Israel, integration of our defense production lines, you name it. Netanyahu is having a bunch of success across the pond, as we all know, with Burnham and forcing the UK and France and Germany to remove their consulary staffs in Tehran. Netanyahu's had quite a week, and I think we're at the tip of the iceberg because he's about to go and meet with Trump, go to Lindsey Graham's funeral. Elections are about to happen. U.S. troops are amassing in Kuwait, and there seems to be a lot of Iranian buildup across the Al-Fawd Peninsula on the Iran-Iraq border, preparing for something really big that may happen.
Yeah, I mean, I posed the revolution question for this reason. Although the Democrats on paper are opposed to this war, when it comes to their votes in the Congress, they're not. They always contrive to have a sufficient number of Democratic Party rebels voting against the party line to give Trump his way, like in the merger of the two armed forces this week of Israel and the United States. The Uni-Party is incapable of really profiting from this political opportunity that has arisen. And of course, the left, of which you're a part, I'm a part, is scarcely able to rise to the occasion. It is quite potentially quite an unstable political situation in the U.S. right now.
I fully agree. The problem is that those decision makers, I guess at least within the cultural spheres that kind of guide where things are headed for the next several years, I mean, who do we have as the main opposition right now to the Trump regime amongst the youth in America? It's Hassan Piker, and I guess you could say our party in the U.S. I mean, we're definitely a large force. And, Nick Fuentes, I would have said maybe a few months ago, but he's kind of died off, and he's saying he's going to cast votes for Democrats in the next election. So I guess that kind of flew out the window. But at least Hassan Piker. And Hassan Piker, what is he doing? He's doing the same exact thing that Jimmy Dore, he got very close, but, he tried to do during the pandemic with forcing the vote on universal health care in the United States. And what happened during that? Cenk Uygur, Jimmy Dore, even Kyle Kalinske, all these people, they got together, they got AOC elected. The first person AOC ever did an interview with was Jimmy Dore. He was the first person to ever have her on any show. And they get all these people elected, and there's mass mobilization behind this effort. And then, what do you know? We're just a few votes shy of forcing the vote on Medicare for all. Just a few bad votes shy. Just like what you said. They're always just a few bad votes shy of achieving any sort of, political goals on these votes in the House of Representatives. And the reason they do that, there's actually a term for it. It's slipping my mind at the moment. But they do that, and they switch off who has to take the bad vote each and every time. You probably know as well as I do from your extensive time in Parliament that this is just how it goes. And of course, that leaves out the question of the U.S. Senate. I mean, that's just a dead end. But why is the grand idea from Hassan Piker? I think maybe has good intentions, but it's like we're just going to repeat what some other people like Jimmy Dore and your uncle Cenk Uygur tried 6 years ago and think that this is going to work this time. I mean, these people are all captured. If they don't take money from AIPAC, they'll take money from J Street, which is the Democratic Party progressive Israel lobby organization. And they don't report these things on Track AIPAC. They don't report these things in these sorts of media outlets because they want to make certain politicians look better than they actually are.
You see, I'm thinking that the conditions are maturing for a third force, not a communist force or a socialist force, though both would be a part of that third force. I'm talking about a Spartacus, an unlikely Ivy League Spartacus, like Tucker Carlson, the best known man in America after Donald Trump, the most eloquent, loquacious of Trump's critics. Candace Owens, I'm thinking of people like that. Could they not seize this moment that seems to be coming upon us?
Well, you know firsthand, I'm very supportive of the idea of I'm supportive of what Tucker's been saying and doing. And I think, he's got to stop saying that J.D. Vance wouldn't be doing and saying all the same things that Trump is doing right now, because J.D. Vance went out on Joe Rogan last week, and literally said that we had to launch this war because we couldn't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So he's actually already saying these things right now. I have zero hope whatsoever in J.D. Vance. I'll never have hope in J.D. Vance. First of all, 0% chance of winning the election. He's just not charismatic. He's like a stale loaf of bread walking around in a suit. But, I mean, what is there to J.D. Vance? What are his politics? Joe Kent resigned. Tulsi Gabbard resigned. You're not going to resign. Your name is on the paper. Your name is on the bombs of these tomahawks that are blowing up these children. I know that's, I guess, maybe unprecedented in American history, but wouldn't that actually make you the hero of the American people right now if you said, I'm not going to be a part of this, and hey, oh, by the way, I'm running for president in the next elections because I'm not going to stand with this? I would be very moved by that if he did something like that. But, of course, he goes along with the machine. He plays the politics. And so I think it's a bit odd that Tucker says he believes in JD so much. But I'd hope that Tucker says, I'm not going to support JD. I'm not going to support anyone who's a part of the cover-up of the Epstein files, the continuation of the proxy war against Russia, the war on Iran. And he himself says, I'm going to be the one that does it. Or Candace. You mentioned Candace. She's great, too.
I think I can say, without betraying any confidences, that Tucker Carlson is carefully weighing up whether he is the best hope. And I think it's important that people such as you, such as I, who have different politics from Tucker Carlson on many things, can get behind him on the most important thing, which is saving the world from World War III, which is ending the war against Russia, which is stopping the agony of the Palestinian people. Stop bankrolling and arming Israel. Tucker's with us on all of those things, and they're pretty important.
Yes, and I don't think I've smiled as big as I ever have when he said that George Galloway should be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom right now, and if it wasn't for the simple fact that the government and the political apparatus in the UK is controlled by Israel, then you would be. I had the biggest grin on my face, and I'll never forget that. And he's right. He's 100% right. And, like I said, it's like, I want him to be, he says all these great things, and I think he believes these things, and I want him to be that guy. We can't allow this opportunity to slip by when the American public is so awake to what's going on. You heard the caller, you were talking to that caller, said she voted for Trump three times. She's from Michigan. That's the type of people we need right now. And there are so many people across America who have that same exact sentiment towards Trump, toward the whole political system in the United States. And we need a sledgehammer. We need a stake to drive through the heart of this imperialist beast once and for all. And it's not going to be J.D. Vance, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We're in full agreement on that. Jackson Hinkle, host of Legitimate Targets, always hitting legitimate targets with eloquence and courage. Thank you for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Jackson Hinkle never disappoints. A quick break, then your calls, then Gayatri. Stay tuned. I defy anyone to contradict the point that I just made, that every person alive today was born of woman. So why would we say that the people in the labor wards, in the maternity units, are people who are giving birth? Why can't we say women? Why can't we say mothers? Why can't we say women who are breastfeeding, mothers who are breastfeeding? Why do we need to say people who are chest feeding? All of these words, and indeed all of the trend that you say you dissociate yourself from, of transgenderism, transmania, I call it, are all taking rights away from women.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Can we get to 50,000 votes on this poll? Which is the greatest threat to the world? China, Russia, or the United States of America? It is overwhelmingly the view of a staggering almost 50,000 people that it's the USA. And therefore, the quantum is important. Imagine if we could say 50,000 people voted overwhelmingly to name the United States as the greatest threat to the world. Let's go to Pennsylvania, where Stephanie wants to talk about Iran, the US, and the hated Pete Hegseth. Go ahead, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, George. I am humbled to share this call with you. You are an answered prayer, as weird as that sounds to say to myself. Sounds weird to me to say, but you fill a void in my heart that was left there by my MAGA father, who wandered off into the void, and I don't know if I can get him back. So thank you for your humanity and your objectivity in all of these happenings.
Thank you.
I had a lot of thoughts. You mentioned the Manab school being bombed and absolutely no official accountability from the United States government. And then my mind went to Pete Hegseth. I said, what kind of psychopath? And Pete Hegseth popped up. And I just wondered, he said he was going to quit drinking when he got this job. I wonder how that's going for him. As a recovering alcoholic, I know I was told and I came to believe that I had a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. The alcohol was a symptom. And we are being led by drug-addicted, alcoholic individuals. We need deliverance from the egos of these men and these women. We want to, prevent World War III. We can't fight these people and their egos, right? We have to go inward and face our own and look to what is actually important.
Well, that's a very beautiful call, Stephanie, a very self-reflective and profound call. And of course, in part, I agree with you. We have experienced degeneration of the human condition, things which are supposed to be better economically than they were 100 years ago, have produced a society that is actually worse than it was 100 years ago. The level of family unity, of community cohesion, the level of sincere and genuine patriotism, the level of commitment to ensuring a better world for one's children than the one that we inherited. These are all much worse indices than they were 100 years ago. Of that I have no doubt, and in part, although not born 100 years ago, it won't be long before I will have been born 3/4 of a century ago. I'll be 72 in a couple of weeks. So I can say that our society, the culture of our society, is definitely degenerating, even though people, whilst often poor in our countries, are not as poor as they were 90 years ago in the middle of the Great Depression. So a lot of it, you're right, is about us turning inwards, looking at ourselves, asking these questions as to how we got to this place and how we can get out of it. But a lot of it is stuff that can't wait for that. Now, November is the election. Now, I don't know who's going to be the candidate in Pennsylvania. But I do know that you have a senator, John Fetterman, who's not only the most buffoonish, it's almost Shakespearean character of buffoonery, but is one of the most malignant and evil senators. I know he's not up for re-election at the November poll, but you have to punish these people. And I hope there will be great candidates that you can vote for. But in my opinion, you have to vote for the candidate who will punish the people who are in power right now and who need punishing right now. That's, I think, the only way that the election can be meaningful. If in the ruins of the election, Trump and his party can see what all this has cost them. So my view would be, don't vote Republican. It doesn't mean the Democrats are any better, but just don't vote Republican because they're in power. They are committing these crimes and must be punished for them. Of course, if you can get behind the Green Party or an independent of note, and there are places where that will be possible, but where it isn't possible, the rubric should be, don't vote Republican. Punish the Republicans so that they can see the level of what will be by then the winter of their discontent. And we've got to make it a bitter, cold winter for the Republican Party come November. Now, Patreon comments. Now, remember, we really need you to subscribe to patreon.com/George Galloway. Some of our best supporters are supporting the show that way, and one of those is definitely a man who's become a friend of mine, Matthew White, who says the USA had the chance to be the greatest thing that ever happened to mankind. They even got the world to themselves post-USSR, and I'm afraid that has just disappeared off my screen. But I'll come back to it because Matthew's words looked as if they were going to be profound, and now they are. They opted instead for poisoning their own people and bringing down the global marketplace. Criminals. And inverse proportionality says all empires collapse, as the Greek, Roman, and British empires have demonstrably shown us. They became the greatest threat to their world around them. The USA is no exception, with a massive debt they are unable to repay, and led by individuals who couldn't get entry-level positions they presently lead anywhere else. And Amy Sanchez says it has always been the US, and before it, England. People seem shocked to find colonialist people committing colonial atrocities. Jeremy is in California on Egypt and Palestine. Jeremy, welcome. What have you got to say?
Well, George, enlighten me. Enlighten me like you've been doing for years, because apparently I've missed something. The genocide going on the Gaza Strip, you've got the Mediterranean Sea on one side, you've got southern Israel on the other side, but you've got Egypt on the other side of the border there of Gaza. Now, I've heard that Egypt has shut that border down. They won't allow anybody to cross, which would probably save a lot of lives in Palestinians that want to flee the slaughter. But it's closed. Why isn't that border forced to be opened by the United States, since we own the dictator of that country?
You own Egypt. Well, that's it. You've answered your own question, Jeremy. The United States owns Egypt, and Egypt does exactly what the United States tells them to do. And that has been the case for a very long time, since the days of Anwar Sadat, who was the very wicked man who began the total betrayal of the Palestinian people with his so-called Camp David Accords, followed by his vice president Mubarak, who was no better at all, and so on. So you own Egypt, and you decide what happens to Egypt. You decide what the Egyptian army does, or more importantly, doesn't do, because you own it. You pay for it. You pick the officers, the generals. So Egypt is not a free agent in this regard. The Egyptian people remain the beating heart of the Arab world. You see it manifested whenever, wherever they can. At football matches, for example, when they are able to gather for another purpose, they turn that purpose into a political rally for the people of Gaza, for the Palestinian cause. The ordinary man and woman in Egypt is as strong for Palestine today as they have ever been, but they live in a wholly owned subsidiary of the United States empire. Now, of course, for medical cases, some people do get through, but the level of corruption involved in getting through is beyond the vast majority of people in the Gaza Strip. But I'm against the mass evacuation of the Palestinian people from Gaza to Egypt to live in new camps in the Sinai desert, because that's exactly what Israel wants to happen. That's why they did all this. That's why they committed this genocidal assault, which goes on until this very day and hour. Why should the Palestinians go to Egypt? Once upon a time, they did this before in 1948. 800,000 of them in 1948 fled the country of Palestine. And they believed that one day they would be able to come back to their own land, their own houses, their own orchards, their own fields. But they never have been. So anybody that leaves Gaza would know that they were leaving their country of Palestine forever. And not many of them are ready to do that. because they believe in their land, they believe in their country, they believe in their cause. They would rather remain in Palestine and fight for its recovery, albeit that fight at the moment looks doomed. There are things worth dying for. There are things that are worse than death. Dishonor of your homeland, of your patrimony, the dishonor of the graves of your parents. That's worse than death. It's worse than death to walk away, as Shakespeare said in Julius Caesar. The brave man dies only once. The coward dies many times before his death. Now look, the legend Norma in Bristol has called in to the show. She's not well enough to go on air, but she wanted to let everyone know that she's watching. She has a CT scan on Tuesday and is undergoing further treatment at the Bristol Royal Infirmary. She wanted to say hello to everyone on Moats. We're all thinking and praying for you, Norma, for your appointment on Tuesday, from all of us on the show, and I'm sure all of the audience who know you to be our very first legend is praying for your health and your recovery. Let's go to Hamburg in Germany, where Bijan wants to talk about Russia and Iran. Go ahead, Bijan.
Before I do so, first I have to congratulate you, George, to this amazing show so far. Young voices that you are platforming here, that, you know, we talked about Fidel Castro, and about a year before you were born, his first attempt failed, but then after you were born, he finally succeeded. And he was pretty old when you last met him, but you're carrying on the fire, the torch, and now you're platforming people that promise to do so in the future. We all hope, at least. I think Jackson has been in China at the same time as you were, and has seen the more enormous transformation, and just as you have done, has highlighted that to a global audience and shown what Chinese socialism can be and can do, something that you never see on mainstream TV anywhere. You just see fear-mongering. But in fact, I think you have proven that there's more freedom of debate in China. I think just recently I saw your debate on AI. It was an amazing debate, very interesting, and I can just recommend everyone who hasn't watched it should watch it. So that's something that's not happening here. We don't see freedom of debate. We see dissenting voices being cancelled and driven out everywhere, and, well, in the case of the UK, driven out of the country. Same is happening in Germany. And I think the reason for that is the war with Russia, obviously. That has led to the fall of the last veneer of this regime. And I just wanted to highlight a connection that I haven't seen so far. Because these attacks on the refineries in Russia, deep into Russia, they hadn't been authorized by NATO, obviously. I mean, they hadn't been authorized by NATO in previous phases of this war. So you've got to wonder, why is that happening now? And I think there's a direct connection to the failure of the U.S. to pursue its goals in Iran, and the lack of 20% of global oil supplies through the Straits of Hormuz, because something that people, maybe if you don't have a Marxist analysis of economics, then it's difficult to see this. But the interesting thing here is that there is a global market price for oil, for crude oil, for WTI and for Brent. But there isn't really a global market price for gasoline or jet fuel, because that's more local. So the headline numbers everyone is focused on, everyone in the media, and also many contracts are written in that way. You have a certain discount towards the Brent, or you add something to the headline price of WTI, and that's the cost that the refinery wants from you if they deliver gasoline. So that's why the Treasury Department in the U.S. has been laser focused on keeping that down with all kinds of manipulation, releasing the strategic petroleum reserves, financial manipulation. You know, Scott Bessent, who is, I have to say that with a bit of respect, he is a mad genius. He was one of the best traders that George Soros ever had in his hedge fund. And he's doing his financial dark wizardry. But I think Treasury is also involved in, or was involved in the decision to authorize those strikes deep into Russia, because the effect is that who's buying crude oil? Consumers are not buying crude oil. So the price consists of the supply, which has gone down by maybe 20%, but the demand side is the refineries. And now that the Russian refineries have been, some of them badly damaged and taken offline for a while, some of them have been repaired already. Russia does have some pretty good engineers. But that means that the demand is lower than it otherwise would have been. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think it's an accident that this happened just now, because the Trump administration's political survival depends on keeping the oil price below a certain limit. And so I think that's connected, and that's something Tucker Carlson recently spoke about, the manipulation. I think that's going more mainstream. People are realizing that the futures market is not accurately reflecting supply and demand here. That's pretty obvious because, you know, the price is not anywhere near where it should be. But if you just cut people off, and some poorer parts of Asia, obviously China is not affected because China has not only huge reserves, but they also have electrification. Lenin talked about that. Russia, the Soviet Union didn't quite realize it, but in China, I mean, I've been most of this year I've spent in China, and I can't remember when I was in a traditional combustion engine car. It's usually just electric cars everywhere.
No.
So they're not as affected.
True.
But obviously, many poorer countries, the people don't get any gasoline at all, right? There's shortages. While in NATO countries...
exactly, you're exactly right, that the price at the pump in the petrol station is not remotely what it should be, given the paper price per barrel, which is now in excess of $100 per barrel. But the actual price that you will need to part with to get that barrel of oil is much closer to $150 than it is to $100. So there's clear manipulation going on. There's the running down of strategic reserves, very dangerous thing to do, going on. Trump himself said he only had 3 weeks left of oil at home, and he was right about that. And that was at least a week ago. So the energy crisis already hammering the industrial economies of Europe, particularly yours, in Germany, but everyone else's also, is now compounded by a Gulf energy crisis. Both Gulfs, Mandab and the Straits of Hormuz. It's going to bring about effectively the end, and as you rightly say, it's the things that you get from oil that no one is I mean, most fertilizer, people think fertilizer is a boatload of ordure. Fertilizer is extracted from petrol, from oil. And if there ain't no oil, there ain't no fertilizer. And the planting season is upon us. And if there's no fertilizer, next year's harvest will be, of course, a very poor one. So the knock-on effects of all of this are very considerable. I'm very grateful to you, Bijan. I'd respond more fully if I had time, but the hour is getting late. Some comments. DT Gypsy sends $5 US. Thank you. Trump's ego will not let him lose, even at the cost of our country. When 80-20 hamburger £2.8, costs $25. Gas is $4.19 a gallon. It's unsustainable. And Karaoke Stars says, George, maybe you should do a special and put your feet on the ground in Iran. Talk to the people. Show the Moat's audience the truth. It will pull millions of views. I have had millions of views for the visits that we have made to Iran. Our video from outside one of the synagogues in Tehran itself alone has received millions of views. Travag Line says, remember, automatic registration for U.S. military draft-eligible men is to begin in December of 2026. And Home Future says, Khan enthusiastically pursued Putin, but didn't give an F about Bush, Obama, Trump, or Biden. F him. And Michael Stevens says, as a Scouser, I feel ashamed that the waxwork mannequin Andy Burnham is bending over for the U.S. war machine. He used Hillsborough to fool Scousers. Not all of us, though. We knew he was a wrong un. He's a chancer, and he knows what I mean. Now, let's take a moment to mention another group of top Moat's financial supporters tonight. Jacqueline Biggs, L. Findlay, Hedge Arvid's daughter, that's ARVIDSDOTTER, easy for you to say Hadj. Hadj Arif's daughter, Tim Watson, and Peter A. Baldwin. Your support through moats.tv, our website, where you can easily leave a donation, is what keeps this program independent, direct, and live on air. If you want to join these heroes, please go to moats.tv, click the Donate Now button. And we've got a hero, a legend, on the line. He's not been with us for a few weeks. It's the legend that is Erebos in New York City. Go ahead, Erebos.
Greetings and salutations and the Fidelidus facilitations to Clan Galloway, the Moats audience, the wonderful guests. I really appreciated the longer form interview, especially with Kent Wrinkle, the Hinkle Jackson there. Really insightful, and you asked them pointed questions that would challenge most of us, if not all of us, especially if we had a high profile. Yeah, I myself am going through a period of what I call genteel poser homelessness. You know, my grandfather was a genteel poser, even though he was Irish, Scottish, and Venezuelan. He liked to pretend that he was a Londoner, you know, and it created a whole sort of fallacy, fake reality type thing. But I'm going through a sophisticated version of homelessness, but it's still homelessness. However, I'm still here, and I'm still plowing through. And of course, I must shout out the mighty and the wonderful Jai the Magnificent, first of her name, well planted in life. She's been a real psychological and support mechanism for me, when many others have failed. You know, they have to get paid to help people. That's the way the game goes in this non-profit profit axis. Anyway, I wanted to take the time to say that I think that it's necessary and it's inevitable for a new Lebanon civil war. The last civil war of 1975 to 1990, of which you know well, birthed the the Party of God, right? The Party of Allah, as they call themselves, Hezbollah. And I think now it's inevitable because the capture of the northern region of Lebanon by the Zionists has long been something that's been at hand, and it's fully manifested now. I would urge people to watch, when Al Jazeera was in its harm reduction mode and others despicable as they usually are. There's the Sykes-Picot Lines in the Sand documentary, free to watch. And, it's very insightful. The San Remo Agreement created this basket case that is modern Lebanon to be exactly what it is. And there's no way out of it except through the fires and the purging of war. And Hezbollah has avoided this because of their religious moral stance, but they can't avoid it anymore because it's going to come to them. It's coming to their doorstep, and they're going to have to fight lest they be subsumed and taken over, and I don't see that happening. So, I don't want to take up too much time because, of course, Gayatri the Gracious Galloway, Lady G, first of her name is on deck, and I don't want to keep her too long, but I'm still fighting, and they say my arms are too short to box with God, but I'm going to swing at him anyway. Maybe I'd connect, maybe I'll miss, but I got to keep fighting. Thank you, Moats.
What a man you are. Thank you, Erobos, for all the kind things that you said. And as it happens, I caught up today with your situation. We're going to do anything and everything that we can to repair that situation and to allow you to give a formal, regular window on New York, window on the United Snakes of America, as you usually call them. And we'll keep everyone posted on that. Your contributions are really vital and important, and none more so than the one you've just made about Lebanon, which, as you know, lies very close to my heart. Time does not allow me to analyze the situation in Lebanon to the extent I would like and to the extent that your contribution deserves. So I'll leave that for another night, if I may. But Lebanon will always be min ayuni, in my eyes. I even speak Arabic with a Lebanese accent. If I speak Arabic to an Arab, they immediately ask me if I'm Lebanese. So it's really important, profoundly important to me. And you're right to say that important, maybe dark, but important times are coming for Lebanon, indeed for the whole of the Levant. I'll have to say goodnight to you, Robos, because I have to tell people about the Moats podcast before introducing Gayatri. You can scan the QR code now on your screen and download our podcast. Do rate it. And we're now in the top 10 for politics in Botswana, Kuwait, Nigeria, and Uruguay, and in the top 30 for politics in the UAE, Pakistan, and South Africa, where we'll be in the month of September. Details forthcoming. Maybe on Wednesday we'll be able to highlight where exactly we're going. Oh, I'm told that we can do it now. Our program for the speaking tour of South Africa is apparently in the can, and if it is, it will appear on the screen now, as it does. George Galloway and his comrade Yvonne Ridley, People Power Tour 2026 of South Africa. Pretoria, Polokwane, Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town, all in support of the Imam Al-Ghazali Global Relief Fund for Palestine. And there's the number that you can call for information, for tickets. It's 2772 588 1231. Abdul Qadir Korta is the man on the end of that phone number. So that's in September for 2 whole weeks. Now, we didn't make it to 50,000, but it's still one of the biggest polls we've ever had. which is the greatest threat to the world? The answer is the United States of America. Now, here's the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Trouble in paradise. Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines, to be precise. Starting with Thailand, where a group of Italian students were caught on camera at the Bangkok trains to be very rowdy and very noisy. And when a local Thai woman asked them politely to tone it down a little bit, she was met with very vulgar words and gestures. And on top of that, their teacher added, "Sorry for bringing money to your country." Now, this caused such an uproar that the Italian embassy had to release a video showcasing these students and their teacher apologizing and asking for forgiveness and that they actually do respect the Thai people. Now, next stop, Bali. Bali, the island of gods and also of digital nomads, which is a very fancy way of saying colonialists with Wi-Fi, because they come to a paradise island initially to find themselves, but finally staying there, setting up shop, and creating a state within a state where their world basically involves everything and everyone like the same people back home in Europe. Now, the Entourage Club is one such initiative. It's like a silent disco running club in Bali. And it turns out that when you apply to join this club, but you're actually Indonesian, i.e. local, i.e. the host country, you are denied entry. Okay? So not only is this running club blockading the already congested streets of Bali, disrupting the many ritual ceremonies that the Balinese practice daily on the streets of Bali, they're outright racist towards the host country. Okay, now Indonesian immigration didn't hesitate and they deported and blacklisted the two individuals behind the club immediately. And these two were Dutch of all nationals, as if 300 years of plundering and extortion and terrorizing wasn't enough. Finally, Siargao. This is a very popular tourist destination in the Philippines, but recently it's seen a growing amount of Israelis, ergo IDF soldiers. And it turns out that they have plans to stay and settle, stabbing their Israeli flag wherever they stay, opening a religious Jewish center. And as for the locals, they receive abuse, harassment, physical attacks, of course, disregard of local law and order, and cafes, local cafes that show solidarity with Palestine by showing the flag or watermelon displays, they get vandalized. The owners get assaulted. Now, the local community, which is actually an indigenous community of this very small island, I mean, it's maybe only 100,000 people on them, they are showing concern that their island is becoming like a little Israel because of the amount of Israeli IDF soldier tourists that arrive there and stay there. And so they should be. And they're not the only one. Israeli tourists in Southeast Asia are the least favorable ones among the locals. And Israel spends millions on PR and propaganda campaigns. But of course, you cannot whitewash the genocide and this despicable behavior of them throughout these tourist destinations doesn't really help.
Well, you've educated me, and I'm sure everybody else, on these three stories. It goes to show that colonialism is alive and well, and in the case of Israeli colonialism, it's not confined only to disinheriting the Palestinian people. They want their greater Israel to be everywhere, even in the Philippines.
All the way in the Philippines.
I mean, I have known Israelis all of my life, really, all of my adult life, since the 1970s. And whilst I have good Israeli friends, and there are some outstanding heroes in Israel, although most of them are nowadays having to live outside of Israel. Yeah. As a whole, I think I wouldn't be defaming them if I said that the Israeli people are the most disliked people on the earth, and for a reason.
Yeah.
The reason is their extreme behavior everywhere that they go. The rudest, lewdest, most vulgar and aggressive people to be found anywhere. And the story you've just told about the Philippines, I mean, who could be nicer than the Philippines people? Who receives you with more hospitality and warmth than the Philippines people? And for them to be insulted and assaulted and effectively taken over by a new wave of Israeli colonialism is indeed a shocking and deplorable state of affairs. They've done it to Cyprus also, by the way.
Not welcome there either. Not welcome there either.
I mean, have they not got enough? Have they not caused enough trouble in the world? Are they not hated enough in the world? They've got to go out. I mean, what's the point in paying $7,000 for a tweet from an influencer to improve your public relations when every day your own tourists are trashing your country? Your own football fans are, every time they take the field, trashing your people more effectively than anyone else so minded could ever do. Well, we've gone way over time, Gayatri, and it's very, 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 very late or early according to your point of view. So I think we'll better say goodnight, and we'll, God willing, be back with you on Wednesday with the midweek Mother of All Talk Shows. By the way, last week, 10 million people watched all or part of the Mother of All Talk Shows. And considering it's run on a shoestring, largely provided by you, I'm really proud of that. Stay tuned. See you Wednesday. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.